Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Groover. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Groover, and we are so excited to have a very special guest. This woman is amazing. I love her to death. She was one of the first people I met in business here in Santa Barbara. It is Valerie Anne Burns. Woo!
Yay!
Yay! Welcome, Valerie.
Thank you.
We got the fake crowd noise going on there, but anyway, everybody's cheering in the background.
They are cheering in the background. So why don't you tell everybody like who you are, what got you to this point in your life, just a quick background, and then we'll launch into some conversation.
Okay. Wow. Quick background. Originally from Miami, grew up a lot of time on the island, which is how my book is titled Caution, Mermaid Crossing, Voyages of a Motherless Daughter. So that was my escape, my bliss. Even as a toddler, I was already in the water. I have lived in several cities throughout the country. I worked in the movie business in LA, doing story as a stylist. I just pretty much everything. Also did some casting and worked in talent. And then with my ex-husband, we had several screenplays. We made a film that I produced, your story credit on. So I have some of that background. Came after divorce, I kind of had to reinvent myself again and had my background in fashion and interior design, which I studied in Europe and in Atlanta. And just thought so naively, oh, I can do this. So I just got a business card and didn't know anyone in town. And added, brick by brick by brick, so to speak. That's how I met you in some of those networking. Mm-hmm. And so I would do wardrobe image makeovers and interior decor makeovers and had a good run. And then we had our big crash in 2010, something like that, 2009. Moved around a lot in Santa Barbara. It's a tricky place for rentals and the expense of that. So I, carried on. And then eventually when I got diagnosed in 2013, which was very much genetic, that's how my mother passed. I was only 3 when my mother died.
Wow.
So it was in both breasts, which is a 5% category. And it went on for 6.5 years, mostly because of complications with staph infections and so forth. So very, very long, 9 major surgeries, lots of hospital stay. And somehow in between all that and recoveries, I was writing a book. And 2016 was kind of the middle of it. I got accepted to the Prague summer writing program. Mm. And I knew I had a big surgery coming up and my oncologist said, go. So I went for a month. I was the only one there without a formal degree, but got in on my writing. And it was through those workshops that gave me the confidence, right? Especially Stuart Diebeck, who is prolific writer, author, professor, to come back and turn all my essays into a book.
Wow.
And I got an editor, a professional editor. Mm-hmm. And she pointed out that, that's great that you're a floaty, ethereal, beautiful writer. However, you need to anchor this book and link all of the essays. And so that took 8 months.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And then absolutely naive, a total reinvention, at the age of 60 to launch into that being my main thing. And through the pandemic. So I've been also taking classes at SBCC and just received my certificate diploma in creative writing.
Yay.
So that's how I stayed sane in a way during the pandemic. I was always taking class.
Yeah.
Online, which, you're not with anybody, but you get so used to it. But it kept me going, and I had homework and lots of homework. And so in all of this time, those credits accumulated, and then just submitting. So I've had 7 essays from my book published.
Nice.
A poem published. I did a reading at Chaucer's recently, and I'm still trying to get my book published in the publishing world. That's a whole other.
Ooh, that's a hard one. How did you find the confluence of the writing and the cancer diagnosis? Did they fuel each other? Did they save each other? What was the connection between those two?
I think perhaps it had to do with the fact that I was home so much and often with drains hanging out of me from surgeries. And I just had to find something to focus on. I can't even remember how I came to that point. I just knew that I was writing as I was experiencing some of the things, but I was also thinking about what that would have been like for my mother back so long ago, and there was nothing being done for women. And it sort of brought all that, but it wasn't until I looked back on a draft that I even realized that I had written from the perspective of a motherless daughter, like how it affected each career, love life, marriage, everything. It affected everything, but I didn't realize that until later. But through all those recoveries and sitting home and pain meds and all that, I think it just gave me something to focus on. That and my hummingbirds, and having them come and sit on my hand and take nectar, and writing about that, and just having moments of beauty, which were my savior. And that's a premise of my book.
Yeah, we're both, Jason and I are chuckling because before you got on, we recorded a couple episodes, and one of them was on simplicity. And I talked about feeding the birds and the jay sitting on my finger and taking the peanut. And, we miss those moments of simplicity. Jason, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was going to say that picture right there is a hummingbird, because hummingbirds are very important to me. So it's just kind of interesting, a lot of the synchronicities of what you're actually talking about and bringing in. So I think it's interesting because, like you said, I mean, here you are, your mother died when you were only 3. Right. Then you have cancer. But I think what's interesting is what you kind of said there is, the writing and the expression and that creative process kind of took your mind away from that, or helped you kind of have an outlet. Because I know so much of the time when people get sick, whatever it might be, people tend to kind of wallow in self-pity and, woe is me, all that kind of stuff. But, you were finding kind of some simple pleasures in writing and feeding the hummingbirds. And I mean, how did you come to that?
I, in all honesty, I had some terrible days. I mean, just the diagnosis, because I had cervical cancer in my 20s and I cured myself holistically. So I had been on that path of exercise, healthy eating, everything, but genetics are genetics. And the fact that it was in both breasts, and they took me immediately for the BRCA, which fortunately I was negative on. But I think because I was on my own, and at that time, I don't have kids, I don't really have family. My brother and I are estranged, and even though he was 5 when our mother died, he did not come into the picture to help out. And I was doing so much on my own. And I think that I had to find those, even if it was 5 minutes of reprieve. And I have always been a seeker of beauty ever since I can remember. And I've had people say, "Oh, I like going on walks with you because you notice everything." And I am an environmentalist and a wildlife animal advocate. So it's important to me to appreciate our nature and our wildlife. And so I was living up in Las Canoas, not that that was the best place. It was way up there and there were a lot of fires, but there was so much wildlife around there, and the hummingbirds, and we had such a terrible drought that they depended on me for that. And that gave me a purpose. I felt like it gave me a purpose. And they would just sit with me and stare at me and hover and come to my hand. I have a video, a YouTube video. I don't even know how I had my camera set up, because I had like 7 of them coming in, like, in and out. And there was always the territorial ones stayed on my pinky. And then the other ones would fly in like a little freeway. And it was the most amazing experience, because that hum that they make in the wing, when you have that many, it's literally going into your body. And so I just felt they were my little healing angels.
Wow.
And I had so much solo time, and I had lost my cat at the same time that I got the first staph. She was 21.
Oof.
And then I had to put her down and go into emergency surgery.
Oh God, that's a day.
I lost one of my closest friends during the middle of all that. There was so much intensity during that time. I honestly, when I look back, I do not know how I did it, but I can tell you there is such a thing as the gift of autopilot, because I was a marching medical soldier. I just, I don't know how I did it. And I look back, and sometimes I don't remember how I got to the office I was sitting at in a parking lot. And then sometimes I would be at one doctor's office parking lot when I was supposed to be in another one, just because I was literally on autopilot, and it was constant. It went on for 6 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
You had said something, Valerie, that I wanted to back up to, because I can relate to this as well. So my mom also died of cancer. She got sick when I was about 11 and died when I was 18. So during my pivotal times, I also did not have a mom. Yours died much younger. But you saying that as you were going through this, you kind of thought back to, what it must have been like for her to not have those kinds of treatments. And I have thought of that as well. If my mom was alive today and had the kind of cancer she did, there's treatments that could have helped her. So did you find, as a motherless daughter, did you find a connection to her that you didn't have previously? Did you find sort of from beyond synergy with her because you were now experiencing similar things?
I felt incredible sadness for what it must have been like for her. Also, she had 2 very young children that she had to have known she was leaving behind. The other thing that makes me very sad about that time for her, she was from the South, and you don't talk about things. Right? So, and in that time, women did not speak the word breast or breast cancer, and she didn't even tell her best friend. And so it makes me sad that she had to keep all that to herself, other than with my father. And that I think she had to have suffered, because by the time she passed, I think she must have had it when she was carrying, because by the time she passed, she had it in her bone. And that takes a while for it to get that severe. So it made me feel very, very sad. I had hoped that she was with me. I don't have I have one kind of foggy memory of her hanging laundry and sitting out on the patio. And in Miami, everything dries in like 10 minutes, but she would be hidden in the sheet, and then I'd see her, and then the sheet would blow back on her. I wrote about this in my book. And that I have my most vivid memory is when she was in the casket. That is a vivid memory. But I thought back at her because I just thought how it's so in the open now, and there's so many people to support you.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Breast Cancer Resource Center or your doctors like Dr. Taguchi and Dr. Stuhler, they've become friends. I was there so much in getting their help. I just wish I had known my mother rather than just inherit her genetics. I just wish I had had a chance to know.
Yeah.
I thought about that a lot. I wanted to seek more But my father passed early too, and we never had those discussions. I was only in my 20s when he passed. And it was a time where, she just wasn't really brought up very much.
But I think it's just amazing. I mean, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, right, about how alike so many of us are, right? My mother died of breast cancer as well, right? So all three of us lost our mothers to cancer. You were both younger. Mine was 33 when she went, but my grandmother died when my mother was only 15, probably from the same thing. I mean, again, it was at that time when you just don't talk about any of these things, right? Yeah. But I know from listening to my mother, same thing, that seeing in the casket and her describing my grandmother, I mean, it had metastasized to where you could see it on her skin all over the place, right? And just again, how so much of the time, even, your mother, all of our mothers probably felt alone somewhat, because again, I mean, today it's much, much more out there, but how none of us are alone. We've all kind of gone through or have some of these similar experiences, and they're things that we can actually talk about, right? Because there's no reason for us to have to feel like we're alone and sit in the sadness ourselves, right? That we can actually reach out. So many people, I think, can relate to us or have had similar experiences if we just are willing to open up and talk about it.
Yeah, this is how I came. I think it was somebody was talking at the Breast Cancer Resource Center, and she talked about how there's all these retreats for women that are survivors, and sometimes are still in treatment. And I looked into this one, and that's how I met Kathy Backus, who is the director of sendmeonvacation.org. She began that after losing her best friend to breast cancer. She started this, and it takes women on retreats. And this, when I first met her, it was 2018, and it was a retreat in Mexico, and we just clicked immediately. And, you went to workshops, and there was, it was in the Caribbean. So I was snorkeling. That's what I was interested in. I wanted to get out in that water because that's what I love. That is where I feel so free. But she really liked my writing. And I told her that I had this idea to use my background in fashion design, because I was trying to also find a purpose and, hopefully totally on the other side and surviving this. And so I came up with this workshop, and I told her what I thought of the title, and she loved it. And it's Living and Healing Through Color. And so I used that background along with my writing, and I read a piece called Venice Vision, which was a dream that I had about being in Venice, Italy, swimming in the canals. However, it was tropical. The water was tropical. And I was looking at all the colors of the buildings. So I used that to get the women to think about color and image and imagery. Because, what I learned in my business is a lot of women don't have that ability. And that's why I coordinate all their looks and all that with color. And there is so much proven pieces out there on how color can really lift your spirit, and in looking at color. And when I was looking at all the medical walls, it's what made me think about that. So, and you have all these artists, famous artists, that speak about the effect of color, whether it's Kandinsky or any of these others. So then I use the psychiatry part of it in using color and present a workshop. And then I get them to thinking about color for themselves and their space, because so many women are home when they're having to be in recovery. And in my own space here, in my kitchen is like this gorgeous orange. And then I have like magnolia on the walls that I added red oxidized, and sage green in my bathroom, and a most beautiful blue where I feel like I'm on the bottom of the ocean when I wake up in my. And I think that there is a lot to be said about that. And so that I've done in Tuscany, and I did it on a walking tour in Tuscany, and in the Dominican Republic, which we had a big suite that was able to
hosting a retreat.
No, I was a facilitator.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they were
talking about color and the environment, and
yes, I would come in and present a workshop as a facilitator. Yeah. So sometimes there are women that come in to do yoga, or there's other healing kind of workshops. And I've really, it's made me feel like there's some purpose with all this, along with my book, of course. But but women in these retreats, when you're speaking about how we have now support, all of these women have the common denominator, even though their experience and their journey could be different, with breast cancer, whether it's stage 1, stage 4, whatever it might be. There is an immediate connection amongst these women. And they're from all walks of life, all different, the Midwest, sometimes they've come internationally, Australia, but that is the common denominator.
Yeah.
And, we all know how scary that is, what it's like. Some people had lots of support. Others, like me, didn't have any support. I mean, family-wise,
Sure.
And that's how and then you can go back and what they call an angel, and then support the other women that are going through. So it's really, it's so great that there are these kinds of things for women out there, because then they can get together, and there's nobody that understands more than someone who's been through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we're starting to wrap, any final thoughts for you, Jason, or?
Well, I could go down a whole rabbit hole on color with you. I mean, and I know you kind of teach that too, but maybe are there just a couple of quick questions, just tease everybody too. But are there certain colors that are good for everybody, or is some of this color stuff actually really more dependent on the person themselves? Because I know you were talking about like sage green and the blue and some of these other different colors. Like if there's certain colors, for maybe people that are listening, it's like, hey, put more yellow in your life, or whatever, if that might help them, or if it's more of kind of a personalized thing that you've seen.
Well, different colors do represent a different emotion. I will say that. Now, Kathy is able to wear that color orange. I cannot. So when I do my stylist work, I am looking at skin tone, hair color, the color of the eyes. I am very fair. I love that color. So where did I put it? In my kitchen. So that's what I would tell these women. That a lot of people cannot wear olive, or they're certain colors. Yellow is another one. However, but if that's a color you love and it makes you feel great, then put it in your kitchen, or paint something in your like one wall, an accent wall. That's how I suggest that, and then I do this is my work. It's been my work. When some of these women say, well, what color do you think would look good on me? I tell them. And if they love a certain color, but I don't think it's going to really be the most flattering, because the point is we want to wear a color that's going to be flattering.
Sure, yeah.
To our skin tone, and everybody's, can be so different with that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ways to do it. And you can do it with, you can like have neutral tones, but then like in the back, I have that color pillow has all my colors in that.
Yeah.
The wine red and the orange and teal, or all in that pillows. And I hunted for that fabric. I don't even want to tell you how long.
That's great.
That's a rabbit hole, Jason. But I love it. I love searching. We lost our fabric store, but I'm that kind of person that could go in there and just look and search for hours. And I find it fun.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's important to do colors you love. It's also on yourself important to wear colors that are flattering, because when I'm looking at you, that's the first thing I noticed was the color you have on, the orange, and it looks good on you.
Yeah, I look really good in orange.
Right. So, but that's what I'm talking about, magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have clients who would do public speaking, I would talk to them about wearing something that everybody's going to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that you say that. I did every year I do the UK hypnosis convention, and it tends to be not drab, but like everybody's in black or everybody's in dark blue. And I showed up in this bright red dress, and the organizer came up to me and he said, "Thank you for brightening this conference." He said, "Thank you for wearing something bold." And because like I look good in the jewel tone, so like the dark blue, the dark purple, the wine, the red, the orange, the fall colors look really good on me from what I understand of this. And he like actually took me aside and thanked me for wearing some bright colors.
right.
Because nobody else was. Everybody else was in these neutral or black tones. And so I love color. I love wearing, everything's orange. My case is orange. My purse is, well, not anymore.
And that becomes kind of your signature. And I wear this color quite a bit because I have blue eyes and I'm very fair. And so, I have to be aware of that. But when, sometimes it's a beautiful color, but not necessarily the greatest for that person's skin tone. Yeah. So I just try to steer them into a different direction. And sometimes people are more spring colors. And even because I do like black as I actually look really good in black with blonde hair. I do. But I like to wear accent color. And so even at that convention, those women could have found some fantastic color in a necklace or a scarf, that was just like a Poochie scarf, that has that vibrant color to it. That's what I would lead my attorney clients into, because they were always having to wear gray or whatever kind of suits. And then I'm like, okay, but your underpinning needs to be in a bold color, or your scarf. And they started getting a whole lot more attention in court, and not negative.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not what you want. Cool. All right. So Valerie, it's been such a joy to have you on. Why don't you tell everybody how to reach you, how to find your book, all that good stuff?
Well, the book isn't published yet. However, on my website, which is ValerieAnneBurns.com, I think Jason's going to put that in.
Yep. It'll be in the lower thirds too.
Yeah, it's Anne with an E, ValerieAnneBurns.com. You can find my published work under books and publications. So the book is not published yet, but you can get a very great sense of my writing by looking under what's published. There's 3 print, like Chicken Soup for the Soul and some other anthologies, but there are also online journals where you can read Venice Vision, which I mentioned earlier, Gulfstream Awakening, which is the opening to my book. Those you can read right there just by clicking on the link. And still hope to get the book published, but there's also my workshop. I talk about my workshop there and some of my stylist work. So it's all on ValerieAnneBurns.com, and you can reach me through that as well.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and talking to us about color and your journey through cancer and losing your mom. And like you said, we can all relate to that. And so many people listening can also relate to that. So thank you for sharing that. Jason, final thought from you?
Right here, 3 of us have all had that experience.
We've all had it.
People.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I wanted to thank you, Valerie, too, because I think, again, we didn't have very much time today. I mean, I could go down this color rabbit hole with you for hours, right, over a glass of wine, but we can't do that on the podcast right now. But grateful for you and also for your example, because I think, too, it's very apparent that you've been able to kind of reinvent yourself throughout your life and continue to find a purpose for yourself and continue to find a way to serve and help other people, help the planet, as well. And so I'm just very grateful that I got to meet you and hear your story. So thanks for what you're doing, and keep doing what you're doing. And I think you're a great example to everybody for what can happen. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And I will be the first one to say that you would have found me in the sofa so curled up if I had my cat with my cat. But I think you do. You just have to find those moments of beauty out there to keep yourself going.
Yep, exactly what we were just talking about before the show. All right, I'm Kathy Groover. I can be reached at kathygroover.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, have a great week, check out Valerie's website, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth Podcast. See ya.
This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.